Hello, once again. I am your host, Doc Rotten, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-host on the net. And tonight we're reviewing The Vigil. All right, this is going to be interesting. All right, joining me tonight is award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Thankfully, there's no dead bodies in this room right now, so I don't.
That we know of. That we know of.
No, I do have. I lied. I do have body props from Backward Creep in here. I lied.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to review The Vigil. And we're going to first give our first impressions, which is normally what you do. Then we're going to talk about the film for a little bit. And then we're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score, 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. Oh, boy. Let's take a look at the film we're going to be reviewing. It is coming your way February 26, 2021. It's going to be in select theaters, digital, VOD. It is written and directed by Keith Thomas. The cast includes, but is not limited to, Dave Davis, Manesh Lustig, and Lynn Cohen. The synopsis says, steeped in ancient Jewish lore and demonology, The Vigil is a supernatural horror film set over the course of a single evening in Brooklyn's Hasidic Borough Park neighborhood. Low on funds and having recently left his insular religion community, Yakov reluctantly accepts an offer from his former rabbi and confidant to take on the responsibility of an overnight shomer, fulfilling the Jewish practice of watching over a body of a deceased community member. Shortly after arriving at the recently departed dilapidated house to sit the vigil, Yakov begins to realize that something is very, very wrong. And that's true. That's true. Things go south, and it could be described as very creepy and atmospheric. Let's find out if that holds true. Christopher, you are up first. What is your first impression of The Vigil?
I loved it. I thought it was very atmospheric and creepy, and I think I'm always interested in seeing horror films based in other cultures or practices or that kind of thing. I mean, we have it, people associated with the Hasidic community, and then there's the parts of it actually that have to have subtitles because I think they're either speaking in Yiddish or Hebrew, and which sort of adds to the realism of this situation, because in that, and they even kind of explain at the very beginning that a lot of times they have people who sit with the body, and so you have that sort of normal thing where you have this person who has his own demons that he's dealing with, coming into the situation where he's sitting with this dead body that has its own demons to deal with, and that kind of clashes. And I think it's really, I think the cinematography, the use of light, is really well done. I think I would mostly compare this to maybe Autopsy of Jane Doe a little bit.
Oh, nice.
And how you have this person, dealing with a dead body, and then you have like the supernatural elements that actually, come into play, even with the use of the cell phone, which is like, oh crap, you're not even safe with your cell phone without this demons playing tricks with you. And yeah, I was like, I will say in the very beginning when there's like a whole like a group meeting and stuff, I was kind of like, ugh, this is kind of boring to start your film off, but I think it really gets, when they take him to the house, that's when it gets really, that's where its biggest strength is, because the use of like sound design, the way they use sound, the way they use light. I mean, there's really beautiful cinematography. They're using the light, almost like Spielberg-esque in certain parts, and also just the use of there's like one part that made me jump off my couch. I wasn't expecting. And for some very creepy moments, and there's one moment I was like, oh no, there's this thing involving a toenail. I was like, stop, okay, stop, stop what you're doing, demon, stop that. It really made me cringe. but yeah, I really liked it. I mean, you know, um, and the way it all plays out is interesting. I mean, I think the I think the main thing I was kind of confused about certain aspects of it, which they kind of tell you towards the end. And I think also with it dealing with a different religious practice and that kind of thing, and things that go along with that, I wasn't as knowledgeable, because there's like one part where he's putting on this uniform thing, and I didn't understand what that was for. That's mainly just because my knowledge base is not, I don't really know much about the Hasidic community and that kind of thing, other than the curly hair stuff. But yeah, it is one of those, you know, traditional haunted house things where you have people that have their own issues in their own life, and how that sort of connects with them having to deal with something supernatural. But yeah, I think it's a well-crafted film, and you know, it's sort of like, you know, like was it His House, I think, from last year, you know, where you have these supernatural films, but they're based, you know, they're not just the traditional white couple that moves into the house type thing. So you get to see the different side of things you don't get to, that aren't really spotlighted in these type of films, you know, especially not, you know, having them speak in their native language and that kind of thing, and incorporating that into it. So it, you know, and I think it's a well done little film, and actually it really creeped me out in certain parts. You really feel for this main character in the film. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Unfortunately, my experience isn't as strong as yours. I just had a hard time getting involved and invested in it. I didn't like the main character. It didn't suck me in through his trauma. The more you learn about it, the more you feel sorry for him and you feel sympathetic to him. But at the same time, I don't know. It just didn't win me over, and I think that's all on me. It certainly can, and I think it did with you, Christopher. And we've seen other you know, Jewish background horror films, Golems, Dybbuk's, right? Dybbuk, and I've enjoyed quite a few of those. And I enjoyed many of the aspects of this, but as much as I enjoyed, I was also lost. Wasn't really following, you know, some of the symbolism, and so I think the more you're into that, the more you know, the more, you know, I'm just going to claim ignorance, and that's a terrible thing. But the more you know about that, and the more you're into it, the more I think you're going to get out of this. I think, like you said, structurally and technically, this film is really well made. You know, it has a small set. You know, it's in this house, and it's not a very large house, and yet you feel like you feel like you know this house, and yet you still feel like there's a lot of mysteries in the house, right? I think we literally get into every room at one point or another, but yet the house feels like it could go on, you know, like you could find another room or another passageway or another surprise somewhere. It was effective in that manner. And of course, you have a dead body in the living room, and that's something that's creepy no matter what, right? In a film like this, in this kind of, you know, scenario or atmosphere, you know, that alone, and they use that really well. You know, it always remains covered for the most part, and did it ever not get covered? But anyway, they end up using the whole concept of it, you know, being draped and everything. There's some really creepy imagery. I like the concept of, you know, the what, you knew the name. I didn't catch
Mazik, because there's because
and its head turned around. But I don't know if I ever really got a gist of it, right? And that's part of the story, because he never really, it's not supposed to be seen clearly, right? That's part of what he says. It's always blurry, it's always out of focus, and they follow through with that. Even to the point at the end there's something that you see that gives you the impression something else still might be going on.
Oh yeah, I had to go back and watch. I was like, oh
yeah,
no.
yeah. So there's this really interesting lore. There's this background story to it. Although I had issues with how the background story, the flashbacks were constructed and sewn together.
Yeah, was you talking about the I think it was almost like the Holocaust.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff I was a little bit confused about it as well. I wasn't really sure as to, that the actions that the one character, I guess, does, was it caused by this demon? And but then I was like, but then they kept going back to that scene back and forth to where I was like, well, then it made me question, like, did he actually shoot the person? So then I don't know. I will agree that I was a little bit, it wasn't as clear as to why that is. And even, I mean, and I will say, like, the main character, I do kind of agree that you don't understand why he's kind of distraught, and they kind of played out, but then it seems very, that mainly he's he doesn't stand up for himself, and he does, because we even have the thing where he doesn't know how to talk to women, so you have this guy who finally grows a spine and gets some courage, and that seems to be the whole main thing. But yeah, the whole flashback stuff, I didn't really understand how that kind of ties into it, other than just like, how doing something maybe allows the magic or this sort of demon entity to come into you.
Right. It's all about guilt and other things too, and letting that go. And
yeah, letting go of the guilt and yeah, I guess it's more of a, it ties the emotional with the supernatural. Mm-hmm. That as long as you have that guilt, you're always going to be broken, and that's going to allow evil to seep in into your life.
Yeah, and that's a common theme that's throughout different types of horror films. So that was the gentleman that passed away. That was his backstory, the one we're talking about. And then he has a backstory too that's in flashbacks. And what happens in the flashback is very important to the story, and I think they communicated that properly. But I also had a problem with how the impact of that connected. Right? I mean, it connected on a visceral level and on the impact level of the character, but I don't know if I really got the emotion that I wanted out of it. Something there just didn't tie it strong enough. I guess our character, I didn't see how the character was broken in the way that they were implying. And now I feel like I'm reading way too much into this, right? Because there is so much to like about it, and I think there are, I think much like yourself, there are many people out there that are going to really enjoy this. There's plenty to see, plenty to like, and don't be me, don't be Doc.
Well, I mean, even even I mentioned that's like, I think not having knowledge of the Hasidic community, not really having knowledge of the Jewish community, I really don't know how a lot of that stuff, how it plays out or works, other than what I've seen in movies or TV shows, which is kind of sad. But, growing up Southern Baptist, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge of how these other religions and how people in these different communities, how they are, other than, seeing the curly hair and those other things. So I think, if anything, I think maybe it also might make a few of us sort of look some of this stuff and research it and find out a little bit more about that community to begin with. But I think at the same time, I think those people who do have knowledge, might be able to see themselves in these type of films and can relate a whole lot more. But I mean, even so, I think even if you're not knowledgeable about that aspect of it, I think if you've ever had any kind of heartbreak or you feel guilty about anything you've done in your life, you can sort of understand how those demons can consume you.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that aspect of it, you can still relate, even if you're not kind of confused, because, some people might just be turned off because there's about probably a third of the film is people speaking and not speaking in English, and there's a lot of subtitles with the Yiddish and stuff. So that, you know, some people might find that annoying, but that's your own issue. But yeah, I did find it interesting just that it wasn't some traditional story set in the same type of environment. I definitely would not be in a wouldn't want to live in a house with a dead body in it like that. I did love a member of my family in the living room. That seems, but I guess that's a normal thing for some communities and some
cultures,
and cultures. But that just seems all kinds of creepy. I watch too many horror movies.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I don't know. But I, you know, even so, I mean, I think with the horrors that happened during the Holocaust, I feel like a lot of evil came from that. So that it's always a good thing to tie some kind of demonic energy to. So I think that's tying that in. And but yeah, I will say that I feel like parts of it are very suspenseful. And to me, it's just as scary knowing that some demonic entity can like fake calls and and you know, fake voices and make you seem like you're talking to somebody else, and that kind of creeps me out too, because you think like, oh, supernatural can't use a cell phone, but this thing can take videos of you and do all kinds of crazy stuff.
That was pretty creepy. Speaking of that, one of the things that there's a lot of things that you're mentioning that really did work. The videos and the phone calls actually really worked for me. Some of the things that didn't was we see the wife, right? The wife's in the movie, and she's most of the time is upstairs or in the kitchen. You know, she's not in there. She's not supposed to be part of the vigil. Let's put it that way. But she ends up. You see her, and it's always a mystery of whether you're seeing her or you're seeing a vision or you're seeing, you know, perhaps, you know, maybe the demon in disguise. And I never got a footing of what, until way too late in the film, right? Until the conclusion of what she was really like, right? Whether she would be somebody to be afraid of, or whether she's somebody that you actually should never be afraid of. And then if you see her, you know, which way you should be thinking and be surprised by what you see. You know what I mean? I just never really got a footing of the contrast between the actual her and the not actual her.
Well, but I think that's on purpose. You want to have the mystery of that. You don't want to have it spelled out, you know, because then, you know, and then or it could just be like Tucker and Dale, to where they seem like they're creepy or whatever, and they're not. But I think that was the whole thing of it. It's like, you know, do we need to trust this woman, or is she just another person who's consumed by this Mazik or whatever this evil entity is? And you know, I think, you know, in some ways you kind of find out that. Well, I'm not going to say anything to spoil it.
I just say the final act wraps everything up and puts my.
It wraps it up, and you understand her.
But I spend
participation and all that.
Yeah, but I spent 60 minutes scratching my head, and
but that's to me that wasn't the normal. Everything involved with the husband to me, so that didn't really concern me as much.
Sure. As
opposed to, I was just more concerned to her, her safety. You know, if she was being harmed by this, or that kind of thing. So, or if she was being puppeted around, you know, by, you know, whatever dealt with her husband. Because then I kept thinking, oh, whatever died with her husband, is that going to consume her? Or
well, it's going to get somebody. It's going to get somebody, right? I there's one shot of her that's on the TV screen there. He's watching an old video, and she's in the background, and it focuses in on her. And that really, that might be the shot that got me the most.
Well, that scene at it reminded me a little bit of was it The Conjuring, where they're watching the Exorcist thing? But you have those moments where you're watching a TV like The Ring or something like that, and you're like, you know, and you're leaning in just like him, like,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening? What is she saying? You know, and then that just adds to that whole scene is very creepy and scary. And I think that's the one moment that made me jump.
Is it? Is it? Okay.
I think I have a thing about creepy basements in general.
Yeah.
You know, where people just walk into a room and the only light on is just the television, and like, okay, something's not right here. Because I mean, I will tell you the whole movie. I'm looking in the background. There's like a chair the guy's sitting in, like in the very beginning, where there's like a painting, and I kept looking at the painting to see if the painting was come to life. Because there's like one part where you see sort of like a shadow figure in the kitchen and stuff. So like the whole time I'm looking at stuff, is something moving? Because even there's parts where you see like the body on the table or whatever. It's like, is the sheet moving, or am my mind just playing tricks with me? So then I feel like I'm just like him. I'm going crazy trying to make sure, you know. And I think that's, to me, that's kind of cool when you can sort of create that kind of atmosphere to where you're just like, it's like me going into like one of those haunted houses, you know, and you're like, where's the person going to jump out at? You know?
Right. Yeah, it certainly sets that atmosphere up very, very well. All right, let's do this. Let's wrap things up. Let's give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene for the Vigil. But before we do, if you're still listening, we want to thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I hope you're enjoying our reviews and our takes on these films. If you want to help us out, it's really easy, and it's free. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button or share with a friend. It's really easy, and that does wonders for us. Thank you so much. If you want to get a little bit more involved, you can hit the like button, or you can hit the bell if you want to find out about more of us, more of our reviews, rather. And then if you have seen the film, you please leave comments. And I have a film I've set myself up for a lot of comments. I will, you know, I know I am wrong about this film. Every year, there's at least 1 or 2 films that I'm like, okay, this film is much better than I'm getting credit for. I'm just missing the point. And that happens. And it happened to happen with this one I'll start off with. But so give me shit down below. You're welcome to do it. But let me know what you thought of the film, more so than what you thought of me. I like that. Yeah.
Sometimes their opinions take a wrong turn.
Oh, there is that. And that happened maybe too. All right. We also want to take a quick moment to thank our patrons who, without their patronage, we wouldn't be able to do not only Horror News Radio, but the Gruesome Magazine podcast, Decades of Horror, and Heroes and Droids. By the way, we were doing WandaVision on Heroes and Droids, and that has been an incredible amount of fun. Diving into that. The Mandalorian was a lot of fun, and other sci-fi and adventure things. So if your taste swings that direction, give those a shot as well. If you want the straight up horror stuff, we also did Wrong Turn recently, and that is a blast to listen to us. Whether the film is a blast, you have to listen to us and find out.
Yes.
All right, let's do this. Our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene. Christopher, you are up first, sir.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was, you know, it is. I will say it's a little bit slow in the very beginning. It's kind of. I was kind of worried in the very beginning, but I think once it goes to the old lady's house and we get straight into it, we go full, you know, has that sort of atmosphere of autopsy of Jane Doe, where you have this sort of creepy house, the flickering lights, and you know, weird things afoot. I think it does what it intends to do, and I think, you know, to go along with that, you know, even though this could be a traditional sort of spooky supernatural haunted house type movie, I think when you're dealing with certain characters you don't normally see when it comes to horror films, like, you know, the a different religious community, like the Hasidic community, I think that adds a different level to it, and takes us into a different area that seems kind of fresh and interesting. You know, I've loved that. I mean, we don't see that enough with, you know, I think, what was it, The Possession that had the Dybbuk box, and
yes,
you have a lot of these films where instead of it being like a Catholic priest, you know, you get to see a different side to it, because a lot of times evil's still gonna attack you no matter what your religion is, if you have one. So yeah, I think it's a, I think again, once it hits its stride is once we get into the house and crazy shit starts happening. That's when it steps on the gas and really gets really interesting and creepy and scary to me. And I think, I don't know who the cinematographer was on this film, but I think it's shot really well. The use of light, and even the use of darkness in certain scenes are really adds to the creepiness and the atmosphere of the film, to where you're like, oh God, I feel really bad. I feel really bad for this main character and what's going to happen to him. And then when you have all kinds of creepy shit starts happening, that's when it gets you sucked in, to where you're like, I hope, is it day yet for this guy? Is he gonna make it through the night? So yeah, I really like this film. I was really impressed by the cinematography and stuff. And I think, setting it in a different type of environment that we don't normally see in these type of films, really makes it a whole lot more interesting than, the fly-by-night films we see all the time that tell these similar type stories. As for rating, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I really,
oh wow, nice.
I mean, I think,
I like that.
I think the strength of it is definitely the cinematography, and the utilization of some of the effects. Especially there's like a hallway scene that's all kinds of creepy. And then a sound design. Whoever did the sound design, this is the kind of sound design I want in my films, where you just everything from the clocks to cracking of bones, and I mean it adds to everything when you're trying to create a film that's creepy and scary. As for favorite scene, I don't want to say it's my favorite scene, but it's the one that affected me the much, and that's the whole toenail scene.
Oh gosh.
You hear the, it's like one of those scenes where you hear a sound. It's like, I don't want to know what that sound is. Why are you looking around the corner? But then when you look around the corner, it's like, now I wish I'd never seen what was making that sound, because now I can't get that. I think that's the one thing, that I can't get out of my head, other than the whole head twisting aspect of the demons. But I'll say that's the scene that stands out to me, because it really, really bothered me.
Got under your skin, huh?
It got under my skin, because I can't stand stuff with fingernails or toenails to begin with. And when you have somebody scratching and then then the toenail comes off, like, oh, no, stop, please stop. So I will say that. Although I probably could have said another scene, but yeah, I think they'll say that.
You go with that one. All right. Unfortunately, the film didn't connect with me as strongly as it did with you, mostly because I just didn't connect with the main character. I didn't feel the peril. I mean, it's there, but I didn't feel it. Right. I just wasn't invested, and I was a little confused by some of the things. Like you mentioned, there's later on he puts on a hat, and that meant something, and some of that stuff just I didn't understand what was going on, and that's on me. I'm ignorant, so I don't know. Could they have said a little something? But I don't think they have to. I think you go into these movies, I suppose you should know some of that stuff, I guess. But having said all that, there are lots of things in this film to admire. The cinematography, like I said, although I will say at times it was a little dark, but that's part of it. The location, I also think, was really strong. The set dressing, I guess you will, because there, like you said, there are creepy things just hanging around. Like the pictures are just so. There's like this shot of a guy, just his head, right? And you just waiting for that thing to like come alive,
Mm-hmm.
and so I mean, this is a bad comparison, but it reminds me of the living room in Conjuring 2, right? because you know that the corner where the guy sat, you know, was always so dingy and gray and everything, right? It didn't matter what was happening; it was always just so you always had that doom and that dread, and I think this whole house had that. I kind of wish I understood the wife sooner, but I think you know the deceased man's wife. Although once I did, it you know things come into play and it works, but it just needed to be a little sooner for me, right? That just I needed to. I would have felt her danger a lot sooner had some of the conversations happened a little sooner. Between the two characters. But that's just me. I think a lot of this film is going to really register with a lot of horror fans, and I do recommend people seeing it. And I'm giving it a 3, which is, you know, it's better than average, right? And I think it's a solid 3. And if you were to twist my arm, I probably would go to 3.25, but 3. My favorite scene, I mentioned it earlier. There are other films that this particular type of technique works on me, and that's when you're watching a scene, but yet what's important and what's scary is happening in the background, right? And then the shot slowly focuses. This is on a television screen when he's watching the video, and by the time it just focuses in, that was one of the times where I realized that I was literally feeling like I was being sucked into it, you know, like you're leaning in to see what's going on, and I really love that feeling. So yeah, I have to go with that scene, and there are plenty others. I might even say like the final scene really has my ears wiggling too.
Well, and I will say, there's
a weird way.
Another scene that I really liked is a lot of times you have people that are in houses and you just tell them get out of the house, and this one it doesn't allow you to leave the house, and I love that aspect of it to where you have some kind of like supernatural entity, so you got to deal with it. You can't just leave the house because it's not going to allow you to leave. So I do like that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was actually when he got out to the street and what was happening was, oh, dude, you're out of luck. All right, well, there you go. That's our review of The Vigil. It is coming out on Friday the 26th of February 2021. Check it out and let us know what you think in the comments down below. Christopher, thank you so much for joining me. This was a blast to talk about.
Oh yeah, always, man. Now I have to just sleep with the lights on now.
If you can.
If I can.
If they don't flicker
Although
away.
with the pandemic, I feel like I don't leave my house enough as it is.
When was the last time? November? All right. Well, let's say good night.
Good night.